Good morning, folks. So last night when had people over, a couple of people asked me about that picture there. I used to tell them that the guy in the middle was my great-granddad and he shot the last one. And a lot of them, what, really? No, not really, but it was kind of fun. But no, I was kind of surprised that they didn't know the story behind that. It got me to thinking maybe other of you don't too. There is some supposed truth to that. I kind of don't think it's true. I think it was as W.C. Fields would say, a hoax, a hoax. But in 1890, it was printed in the newspaper that some cowboys shot a pterodactyl. They didn't say what it was. They said it was a giant flying lizard that supposedly they shot. But anyway, I looked it up on here. I'll read you some of this. It's kind of interesting, and like I said, I think it was just kind of a made-up story that they printed in the newspaper. But there's some people that do believe it. I kind of don't believe so, but it's interesting. It says, in the spring of 1890, two ranchers were returning home on horseback across the southern Arizona desert when they encountered a very strange creature. It was, according to the report at the time, a winged monster resembling a huge alligator with an extremely elongated tail and an immense pair of wings. The creature was identified as a flying reptile thought to have been extinct since the late Jurassic period about 150 million years ago, living and breathing pterodactyl. The encounter occurred on Sunday the 20th of April, 1890, in the remote desert between the Whetstone and Hachawa Mountains, maybe? A few miles north of the U.S.-Mexico border and west of the San Pedro River. Today, the city of Sierra Vista sits in the valley between the two mountain ranges, but in 1890, only 4 years after the end of the Apache Wars, white settlers were only just arriving and setting up ranches and homesteads around Fort, I don't know what that word is, I don't know, Huachuca. Anyway, Arizona's major army base. The nearest town, about 20 miles to the northeast, was Tombstone, the famed setting of the 1881 gunfight at the OK Corral. The strange creature encountered by the ranchers became known as the Tombstone Pterodactyl or the Tombstone Thunderbird. According to a report in the Tombstone Epitaph, which is a newspaper, on the following Saturday, the creature appeared to be exhausted and resting on the ground when the two ranchers approached. After the first shock of wild amazement, the ranchers pulled out their Winchester rifles and rushed at the creature. It immediately took to the sky, but in its exhaustion was only able to fly a short distance before returning to the ground. The ranchers pursued the creature on its stop-start flight. On an exciting chase for several miles. Cowboys being cowboys, as soon as they got within rifle range, the ranchers opened fire and hit the creature. The wounded and exhausted animal turned on the men as they approached, but the ranchers were able to keep out of its way and fire a few more well-directed shots, according to the report. The monster partly rolled over and remained motionless. The men cautiously approached their horses snorting with terror and found that the creature was dead. The ranchers proceeded to examine the creature and reported some startling measurements. According to the epitaph, the creature's body was an infeasible 92 feet long. Its head was about 8 feet long. Its eyes were as large as dinner plates, and its jaws were set with thick rows of sharp teeth. The men noted that the creature had 2 legs like a bird, but was entirely featherless and hairless, and that its smooth skin had been easily penetrated by their bullets. With some difficulty, the men extended one of the creature's wings, which was covered in a thick, almost transparent membrane. The wing, they estimated, was 78 feet long, making the total tip-to-tip wingspan of the creature about 160 feet, the same as a modern Boeing 767 passenger jet. Unable to move the huge beast, they cut off the tip of one wing and took it home. A few days later, one of the ranchers rode into Tombstone to gather supplies and a posse of several prominent men to head into the desert and retrieve the creature before it was mutilated. The plan was to skin the pterodactyl and send the hide back east for examination by eminent scientists of the day. The posse set off 6 days after the original encounter. There is no record of them returning with the creature, or perhaps there is. In subsequent decades, rumors surfaced of a photograph taken upon the return to Tombstone. Apparently, the men had nailed the creature to a barn and posed in front of it. Numerous witnesses recalled seeing the photograph, perhaps in the Tombstone epitaph. However, they could not have been the case. A search of the newspaper's archives shows the epitaph did not publish photos in 1890. The most commonly presented photo of the Tombstone Thunderbird is the one below, which is this one. It's very definitely a deliberate fake, described by digital artist Chris Smith on his Flickr page. My version of the famous Lost Thunderbird photo, allegedly published in the Tombstone Gazette in the late 19th century. And, I mean, he did it because he heard the story. He wasn't trying to fool anybody. He just thought it'd be kind of a fun picture to make. Several other fake photos are in circulation, most of them much less convincing than Chris's creation. In 1930, Major Horace Bell, a former U.S. Ranger, retold the story of the Tombstone Pterodactyl in his book On the West Coast. A little after that, according to another story, an unnamed old cowboy approached a pressman in Tombstone and told them that he was one of the original ranchers who had encountered the creature. The original newspaper story, he said, had been exaggerated, but it was partly true. The two men had shot at and chased the creature, but had not downed it or killed it. Their horses had been spooked, and the men had been frightened, so they let it fly away. Years later, in May 1963, writer Jack Pearl published an article in Saga magazine titled Monster Bird That Carries Off Human Beings. Pearl recounted several supposedly true tales of encounters with pterodactyl-like creatures, including one that was dated for 1886, but it seemed to refer to the story from 1890. According to Pearl, two prospectors brought a dead pterodactyl into Tombstone on a wagon, nailed the creature to a wall, and posed with it among a group of 6 men for the photograph. This seems to have been the earliest mention of the photograph, but it was not the last. As revealed by authors Mark A. Hall and Mark Lee Rawlings in their book Thunderbirds, America's Living Legends of Giant Birds, numerous people, naturalists, authors, and magazine correspondents claim to have seen this photo, but attempts to verify it has failed. In 1966, the then editor of the Tombstone Epitaph said he had searched the newspaper's records and found no photographs, so if it ever existed, it had no connection with the newspaper. There was no further interesting anecdote. In 1969, Old West magazine retold the 1890 Tombstone Pterodactyl story. A few months later, in 1970, a reader named Harry McClure wrote to the magazine to say he had met the two ranchers and they had told him the story. According to McClure, the ranchers did encounter the huge creature in the desert, although its wingspan was only about 30 feet, not 160. They did shoot at the creature, but it was out of range, as the story from the 1930s said, and their frightened horses refused to give chase. So the creature got away, and the ranchers went to Tombstone with only a story, not a dead creature or even a wingtip. Nevertheless, a reporter at the Tombstone Epitaph published and embellished the story, although not a photo, as no photo was ever taken. So could a pterodactyl or similar pterosaur been survived into the late 19th century in Arizona? We know that pterodactyls did once live in Arizona. There are reports of miners and railroad workers finding fossilized evidence in the Victorian era, and in 1957 the photo of paleontology reported the findings of pterodactyl tracks in the Arizona mountains. In addition, ancient cave paintings in neighboring Utah are said to show pterodactyl-like creatures, suggesting that it might have avoided extinction and survived into the last millennium. This theory has been debunked by scientists. It also worth noted that Dr. John F. Boynton, the paleontologist and inventor and a founding member of the Latter-day Saints movement, although he later denounced the Mormon founder Joseph Smith as a fallen prophet, toured U.S. cities in 1869 with a popular lecture entitled The Age of the Dragons. Boynton introduced audiences to the Megalosaurus, Plesiosaurus, and pterodactyls, but he had reconstructed using fossilized remains with an 18-foot wingspan. So the idea of a flying lizard was present in people's minds at the time. It seems highly unlikely that the ranchers encountered a pterodactyl in Arizona in 1890, and if they did, there is no photographic evidence. But reported sightings of flying reptiles have continued through to present day, particularly across the U.S. western mountain states. There are real pterodactyls in the American skies? I'll leave you with this video and a website called Drastic Kites. This one, anymore that AI stuff, it's so hard to believe anything you see. I mean, I saw one the other day. The guy, I don't know who he is. He's somebody famous anyway, but they had him saying that he believed that the world was flat and all this stuff. And right after they showed that clip, the real guy was on there and said, "This is not me. I never said these words." He says this is all done with AI. So kind of hard to know what's real and what's not anymore. But this little clip I'm going to show you here in a second, it says, "Is there a real pterosaur spotted over Idaho, USA?" Maybe. Maybe it's computerized. I don't know. That's kind of interesting anyway. So, show it to you here. Kind of interesting, ain't it? If that is real, it ain't a bird. I don't know. I kind of doubt it, but you never know. Kind of fun to think it might be real. Maybe. Anyway, folks, see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.